Sit down.
Care if I talk? I'm kind of nervous when I take tests.
Just please don't move.
Oh, sorry. I already had an IQ test this year. I don't think I've ever had one of
Reaction
these.
time is a factor in this, so please pay attention. Now answer as quickly as you can.
Sure.
1187 Hunterwasser.
That's the hotel.
What?
Where I live.
Nice place?
Yeah, sure, I guess. That part of the test?
No. Just warming you up, that's all.
No. It's not fancy or anything.
You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a
Is
sudden...
this the test now?
Yes. You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look...
What one?
What?
What desert?
Doesn't make any difference what desert is completely hypothetical.
But how come I'd be there?
Maybe you're fed up. Maybe you want to be by yourself. Who knows?
The Technotronic era, and that Technotronic, by the way, is a knockoff for the word technocratic. So he, quote, again, the Technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities, close quote.
This man is Jean-Baptiste Pierre-Antoine de Monnet, Chevalier de Lamarck. In 1809, 50 years before Darwin published The Origin of the Species, he wrote what is widely recognized as the first comprehensive theory of evolution. His book, De Philosophie Zoologique, introduced the notion of an internal code within every living thing, which, when passed down through successive generations, defined the physiological characteristics of a species. At the center of Lamarck's theory laid what he called the adaptive force. He believed that the experiences of an organism during its life modified this internal code, and upon reproduction, this modified version was passed down to its young. Whilst not biologically accurate, and ultimately superseded by Darwin's theory of natural selection, the epigenetic theories put forward by him are beginning to find new homes in unexpected places.
So, we're revealing who really is, behind this technocracy system. And often that takes us to places like Google and Facebook, because they are the technological giants. They're the equivalent of big pharma to the information age.
When we use contemporary technology, a trail of information is created in the form of data. When analysed, it describes our actions, decisions, preferences, movement, and relationships. This codified version of who we are becomes ever more complex, developing, changing, and deforming based on our actions. In this regard, this ledger of our data may be considered a Lamarckian epigenome, a constantly evolving representation of who we are.
And they are getting so powerful, especially in Google's case, that they're having visions of grandeur, that they can control the entire planet.
This is Bill Hamilton, one of the most significant evolutionary theorists of the 20th century. His work studying the social structures of ants, bees, and wasps had a profound effect on our understanding of the role of genes in social behaviors such as altruism. He believed, and went on to prove, that the driving force behind evolution was not the individual, but the gene. He stated that the ultimate criterion which determines whether a gene will spread is not whether the behavior is to the benefit of the behavior, but whether it is to the benefit of the gene.
When I say visions of grandeur, I'm talking about megalomaniac technocrats who have a view of the world that suits them, but it's not the view anybody else has. It's a very narrow group of people who run these technological giants like Facebook and like Google. And they think their worldview is the only worldview that is appropriate for anyone.
So what's up, man?
Sit down and face forward. Now, I don't have a lot of time. I know you need money. Did Michael tell you about Life Invader?
Oh shit, y'all two did that?
Look forward. We're two strangers having a friendly chat, and don't pretend that you liked Jane Norris.
Oh, man, I don't know, homie. I mean, yeah, the dude outsourced work to child slaves, then stole and sold everybody's private information.
And they are in process of engineering society throughout the world to mold and bend to this idea that they have, that what everything should be like. And the thing that this really documents this, and I encourage people to go to the article that I wrote, posted on technocracy.news, called Technocracy at Google, How Personal Data Enables Total Social Engineering.
You look down and you see a tortoise, Leon. It's crawling towards you.
Tortoise? What's that?
You know what a turtle is?
Of course.
Same thing.
Never seen a turtle. But I understand what you mean.
You reach down, you flip the tortoise over on its back, Leon.
Do you make up these questions, Mr. Holden? Or do they write them down for you?
The tortoise lays on its back, its belly baking in the hot sun, beating its legs, trying to turn itself over, but it can't. Not without your help. But you're not helping.
What do you mean I'm not helping?
I mean you're not helping. Why is that, Leon? They're just questions, Leon. In answer to your query, they're written down for me. It's a test designed to provoke an emotional response. Shall we continue?
In the mid-1970s, the British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins built on the work of Hamilton and others to popularize the concept of the selfish gene. In his book of the same name, he introduced the notion of a gene which, whilst devoid of any motives or will, could be metaphorically and pedagogically described as if it were. In this model, the individual organism is a transient carrier, a survival machine for the gene. User-centered design principles have dominated the world of computing for many decades, but what if we looked at things a little differently? What if the ledger could be given a volition or purpose, rather than simply acting as an historical reference? What if we focused on creating a richer ledger by introducing more sources of information? What if we thought of ourselves not as the owners of this information, but as custodians, transient carriers, or caretakers?
The hidden intent, if you will, of Google to manipulate and control society completely through data. When companies like Google collect so much data on you, they build a personal profile for you where all of your data is stored. All of your online transactions that they can get their hands on, all of your psychographic things that come from the postings that you do on social media, all of the the government stuff that they can suck out of the government that has to do with your personal profile. They can find out where you live, what your tastes are, what kind of car you drive, what kind of stuff you buy. Do you subscribe to Netflix or Heroku or something else? They can get more information on you than you know exists about you.
Initially, the notion of a goal-oriented ledger may be user-driven. As an organization, Google would be responsible for offering suitable targets for a user's ledger. Whilst the notion of a global good is problematic, topics would likely focus on health or environmental impact to reflect Google's values as an organization. Once the user selects a volition for their ledger, every interaction may be compared to a series of parallel options. If one of these options allows the ledger to move closer to its goal, it will be offered up to the user. Over time, by selecting these options, the user's behavior may be modified and the ledger moves closer to its target.
And when they put that all in one nice little packet and begin to analyze it with their super fancy artificial intelligence, they start making assumptions and predictions about your behavior. This is about production and consumption, economics. It's not about politics as much. But when they learn what you are all about, they will begin to market to you and nudge you in certain directions that you don't even know you're being nudged.
As this line of thinking accelerates and the notion of a goal-driven ledger becomes more palatable, suggestions may be converted not by the user, but by the ledger itself. In this case, the ledger is missing a key data source, which it requires in order to better understand this user. In order to plug the gap in its knowledge, the ledger begins searching for a device which delivers the required data when used. From this list, the ledger begins sorting the options most likely to appeal to the user in question. In situations where no suitable product is found, the ledger may investigate a bespoke solution. By analyzing historical data, it is increasingly possible to discern qualitative information such as taste and aesthetic sensibility, which may be used in the creation of a design proposal. With the advent of technologies such as CNC milling and the emergent possibilities of 3D printing, a custom object may be created to trigger this user's interest. In this way, the ledger is able to plug gaps in its knowledge and refine its model of human behavior.
This is predictive marketing, if you will. But I'll tell you what, you listen to this video that I'm talking about here, this selfish ledger video, you'll understand what the whole object of this game is. And making predictions about your behavior goes far, far beyond just what you're going to buy and sell. It goes on with what you're going to do, where you're going to go, who you're going to see.
User data has the capability to survive beyond the limits of our biological selves, in much the same way as genetic code is released and propagated in nature. By considering this data through a Lamarckian lens, the codified experiences within the ledger become an accumulation of behavioral knowledge throughout the life of an individual. By thinking of user data as multi-generational, it becomes possible for emerging users to benefit from the preceding generation's behaviors and decisions. As new users enter an ecosystem, they begin to create their own trail of data. By comparing this emergent ledger with the mass of historical user data, it becomes possible to make increasingly accurate predictions about decisions and future behaviors. As cycles of collection and comparison extend, it may be possible to develop a species-level understanding of complex issues such as depression, health, and poverty. Our ability to interpret user data, combined with the exponential growth in sensor-enabled objects, will result in an increasingly detailed account of who we are as people. As these streams of information are brought together, the effect is multiplied. New patterns become apparent and new predictions become possible.
It was defined in their own magazine as the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population. That's it. It's exactly what Google is talking about today. That's exactly what Facebook is talking about. The science of social engineering. And this video, the leaked video, is exactly about social engineering, and there are no holds barred on this. They say it flat out. This is the way it's going, guys.
Since the 1970s, huge efforts have been made in sequencing the human genome. Today, after many years of research and billions of data points, that sequence is known. By adopting a similar perspective with user data, we may begin to better understand its role. Just as the examination of protein structures paved the way to genetic sequencing, the mass, multi-generational examination of actions and results could introduce a model of behavioral sequencing. As gene sequencing yields a comprehensive map of human biology, researchers are increasingly able to target parts of the sequence and modify them in order to achieve a desired result. As patterns begin to emerge in the behavioral sequences, they too may be targeted. The ledger could be given a focus, shifting it from a system which not only tracks our behavior, but offers direction towards a desired result. We are at the very beginning of our journey of understanding in the field of user data. By applying our knowledge of epigenetics, inheritance, and memetics to this field, we may be able to make mental leaps in our understanding, which could offer benefits to this generation, to future generations, and the species as a whole.
they're building the system, the global system, without a global leader. This is purposeful, intentional. They're building the global system without a global leader. And he goes on to say and conclude that the system itself is globalization. In other words, they're building a system to control people with AI. But AI is being applied in every conceivable place that you can imagine. And according to Google's own leaked memo here, AI is the only thing that can run what they want to do, what they're trying to do. You got to take the data, you have to analyze it. We're talking about massive computing power, by the way, and you have to analyze that data and then spit it back to the user in such a way that he never knows that he's been analyzed and sliced and diced. It needs to be that natural, and it is already that natural. Most people have no clue how they're being manipulated and nudged right now.
Describe in single words only the good things that come into your mind. About your mother?
My mother? Yeah. Let me tell you about my mother.